No one noticed the boy at first. He sat alone on that cold metal bench outside courtroom 3B, hunched forward like he was trying to disappear into himself. 13 years old, but his eyes looked decades older. That leather jacket hung off his thin shoulders like it belonged to someone else, because it did. The Hell's Angels patch on the back was faded, worn at the edges, but still unmistakable. People walked past. They whispered just loud enough for him to hear. Troublemaker. Gang kid. Just like his father. The boy's jaw tightened each time, but he didn't look up. He'd learned that looking up only invited more judgment, more assumptions, more doors closing before he could even knock. What they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that his father was dead, 6 months in the ground, killed when his motorcycle slid out on wet pavement on Highway 9. The boy had identified the body because there was no one else. They didn't know his mother had vanished when he was 7. Just walked out one Tuesday morning and never came back. No note, no explanation, just gone. They didn't know the boy hadn't slept through a full night in months, that he jolted awake at 3 a.m. still reaching for a father who would never answer, that he wore the jacket because it still smelled like motor oil and Old Spice, and that was all he had left. They didn't know any of this. They only saw the patch. And that was enough to condemn him. The bailiff called his name. The boy stood slowly, shoulders back, trying to look tougher than he felt. The courtroom doors felt impossibly heavy as he pushed through them. Grandma Evelyn, 1:45 to 2:30. Inside, the courtroom was exactly what he expected. Cold, sterile, fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick. But there was one person he didn't expect. Grandma Evelyn, 78 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a simple bun. Hands weathered and worn from decades of work. Factory work, cleaning work, the kind of work that never makes headlines but keeps the world running. She sat quietly in the front row, knitting needles moving in a gentle rhythm in her lap, creating something warm in that cold space. The boy's throat tightened when he saw her. Of all people, she was the last one who should be here, the last one who should associate herself with someone like him. The proceedings began. The prosecutor stood, papers rustling importantly in his hands. Your Honor, the defendant is charged with assault and vandalism. He has known associations with the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. We have witness testimony that he instigated a violent altercation at school, resulting in another student requiring medical attention. This pattern of behavior, the boy stopped listening. He'd heard it all before. In the principal's office, in the police station, in the social worker's concerned voice. The story was always the same. He was the problem, the troublemaker, the lost cause. Then the judge spoke, his voice tired from too many cases just like this one. Is there anyone willing to speak for the defendant? Silence. The boy clenched his jaw. He'd expected this. Why would anyone stand up for him? Why would anyone risk their reputation for a kid in a gang jacket? That's when the knitting stopped. The click of needles went silent. In that quiet courtroom, it sounded like thunder. Grandma Evelyn stood up, her chair creaking slightly. Every single head turned. I will, she said. Her voice was soft but carried weight, the kind of weight that comes from surviving things that would break most people. The judge leaned forward, eyebrows raised. Ma'am, do you know the boy you're defending? Yes, she said, meeting his eyes steadily. I do. The prosecutor shook his head, frustration creeping into his voice. Your Honor, with all due respect, this boy is charged with serious offenses. He assaulted another student. He runs with a biker gang. He's following a dangerous path. Grandma Evelyn nodded slowly. Yes, and I know why. She stepped forward, moving with the careful dignity of someone who'd learned to carry pain without complaint. This boy walks me home every Thursday, she said. Rain or shine. He carries my groceries when the bags are too heavy. He fixed my porch step when I nearly fell. He checks my mailbox on days when my arthritis makes my hands hurt too much to grip. The courtroom shifted. People exchanged glances. This wasn't the story they'd expected. When my husband died last year, she continued, her voice catching just slightly. This boy sat with me for 3 hours. He didn't say much. He didn't try to fix it with empty words. He just stayed. And sometimes that's exactly what grief needs. The boy stared at the floor. His eyes burned. He couldn't look at her. Couldn't let anyone see what her words were doing to him. The truth comes out. 4:30 to 5:30. They say he hit another student, Grandma Evelyn said, her voice growing stronger. What they didn't say, what wasn't in those reports, is that the student he hit had been taunting him for weeks, insulting his dead father, calling him trash, saying his father got what he deserved. The murmuring in the courtroom grew louder. The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably. This boy asked the teachers for help 3 times, she continued. 3 times he tried to handle it the right way, and 3 times he was told to ignore it, to be the bigger person, to walk away. She turned to look at the boy, then back at the judge. You see a patch, she said. A symbol. Something that makes you uncomfortable. I see a child who was never protected by the systems that should have kept him safe. I see a boy who found a family when his own fell apart. Are they perfect? No. But they were there when no one else was. The judge listened closely, his expression unreadable. I buried 2 sons, Grandma Evelyn said quietly. 1 to war, 1 to the streets. I know what it looks like when a child is truly lost. She looked directly at the boy. Her eyes were fierce with belief. This one is not lost. Not yet. Not if someone is willing to see him. Outside the courthouse, 6 motorcycles waited in formation. Hell's Angels, every one of them. They sat quietly on their bikes, engines off, helmets on. Watching, waiting, ready to be there for one of their own. Inside, the verdict came after what felt like an eternity. Community service. Anger management counseling. No detention. A second chance wrapped in conditions and hope. The engines outside remained silent, but the boy could feel the weight of their presence. Of people who'd chosen not to abandon him. He looked at Grandma Evelyn as they walked out together. She'd packed up her knitting, moved slower now, tired from the emotional weight of the morning. Why? He whispered. Why did you do that? She stopped, turned to face him, and squeezed his hand with those worn, strong fingers. Because someone once stood up for me, she said simply. When I was young and scared and making mistakes, someone saw past what I'd done to who I could become. I'm just passing it forward. She smiled. Besides, you're a good boy who's had a hard time. That's not the same as being a bad boy. She thought it was over after that. The courthouse, the testimony, the verdict. She thought she'd done her part. She had no idea what was coming. 3 days later, on a quiet Sunday morning, a deep rumble echoed down her street. One motorcycle, then another, the sound growing like distant thunder rolling closer. Neighbors emerged onto porches. Curtains parted in windows. People watched, nervous and curious. Grandma Evelyn opened her front door. The Hell's Angels stood in a line across her lawn. 20 of them, maybe more. No noise, no threats, just presence and respect. The man in front, gray beard, road-weathered face, patches covering his vest, removed his helmet and approached slowly. Ma'am, he said, voice rough but sincere. You stood up for one of our kids when the whole world was against him. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check, enough money to pay off her mortgage completely. Another biker stepped forward, unrolling blueprints. We're building you a wheelchair ramp. Already got the permits. Work starts Tuesday. Won't cost you a penny. We protect those who protect our own, the first man said. You didn't have to stand up, but you did. That means something to us. The boy stood behind them, no longer hunched or hiding. Taller somehow. Stronger. His eyes met Grandma Evelyn's, and something passed between them that needed no words. Years later, people in that town would talk about the day a grandmother faced down a courtroom to defend a boy everyone else had written off. But the boy, who grew into a man, who finished school, who learned a trade, who eventually became a mentor to other lost kids, he remembered something else. He remembered the day someone chose him. The day someone saw past the jacket and the patch and the mistakes to the human underneath. And that single act of belief changed everything. Because sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to stand when everyone else sits. One voice willing to speak when everyone else stays silent. One heart that refuses to give up on someone the world has already abandoned. If the story moved you, subscribe for more powerful true stories that remind us of the good that still exists in this world.